Good morning. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate the Abrahamson family traveling from Idaho to be here today. And we really appreciate the chief and members of the Monacan Indian Nation for being here with us today to have this conversation. And we really appreciate all you for taking time out of your morning to join us. When we started this discussion again, because it's been had before, one thing that we wanted to make sure of is that we heard the perspective of indigenous families and members of our local communities also. It is often when you're making decisions, which in this case, we're talking about whether the statue that's on West Main Street stays in place, whether it's removed, whether it's just shifted, and if so, just the beginning of a conversation about what does true honor look like. And I don't think there's anyone better to tell you what honoring a group of people means other than the people themselves and the descendants of those people. And oftentimes we find ourselves in positions where we think that we know enough to make those decisions for other people. And as we discussed or heard a little bit outside about balance, we've been out of balance in this community for a long time. We're usually having that conversation just in terms of black and white, but that imbalance started way before the discussions that we're usually talking about. And from the historical perspective, just understanding and honoring us as being one people is a issue that we have suffered from under colonization and primarily white rule. And when we start having these discussions about what does healing look like, what can remain in place, what symbols can tell our story and dictate the journey that we continue, it's often led from a very white perspective. And we have been in this place of, I think, constant chaos because we haven't been open to making sure that we hear from individuals who are the most important ones in making decisions like this. So my hope for today is that we shift more as a community into that place of where we can find true balance, and that we're not holding on to misconceptions and misinformation in the past that we have in the past, and that we're open to maybe a new way. And if that means that statues, for some, that represents great art and one of the finest pieces ever to been sculpted, doesn't tell the story of the indigenous people, then those in positions of power who found themselves able to lead those discussions in the past, hopefully today you will be open to listening, and for us as a community having, again, difficult, uncomfortable conversations about what that shift looks like. So again, thank you all for being here, and we really appreciate it. And now we'll just go around, and I'll start and just introduce ourselves so you'll know who's in the room. I'm Nakaya Walker, the mayor of the city.
I'm Heather Hill, I'm City Council.
Mike Signer, member of City Council. I want to, due to some scheduling issues, I'm going to have to leave right after lunch, but I'm really glad that you all are here. Thank you all, everybody.
I'm Kathy Galvin, City Councilor, and thank you so much for making this trip.
I'm Chief Kenneth Branham of the Monacan Indian Nation. I want to welcome y'all to our country. Thank you for coming.
And I'm Freddie Brown. I'm from the Monica Nation.
I'm Teresa Polly, the Secretary of the Monica Nation.
Grace, community member. I'm from the Chickasaw Nation.
I'm Roseanne Abrahamson, a Magaidika, a familial descendant of Sacagawea.
Destina Abrahamson, I'm her daughter, so say.
Hello, everybody. My name is Willow Abrahamson. I am also the daughter of Roseanne Abrahamson, and I am also the last Lemhi born in the homelands of Sacagawea, and I am also a familial descendant. Thank you.
My name is Emma George. I'm an Agaidika and a proud lineal descendant of Sacagawea, and thank you for allowing us to be here.
And this is the second time, thank you. This is the second time that some of you have traveled to have this discussion. And I would like for Guy Lopez to just introduce himself, because he has been keeping this conversation going in the community also. And thank you.
Again, I'm Chief Kenneth Branham of the Monica Indian Tribe. Our headquarters is about 60 miles south of here, down 29. This is I know that at least 2 times your people have been here. I was involved with the Lewis and Clark expedition when they redid it back in 2002, and we hosted it for a week here in Charlottesville. But I did meet some of your people once before when we were doing something with the statue. I think we put a plaque there. Again, I welcome y'all to Monacan country. We just received federal recognition back in 2018, so we're a little new in the federal part of it, but we're very old in the native part of it. And our headquarters is in Amherst County, and if any of you get down in Amherst County, we'd love to show you around and show you our small museum and teach you a little about our people. Thank you for coming, and we hope this will be a very worthwhile trip for you, and you have safe travels.
Thank you. And next we have a presentation from city staff.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Virginia again. My name is Jeff Warner. I'm the city's historic preservation and design planner, and I was asked to just offer some brief comments on the history of the statue. And I know when you all came in 2009, you worked with Mary Joy and the Historic Resources Committee, and some of those folks are here today. So the statue, which is entitled The First View of the Pacific, was sculpted by Charles Keck in 1919. It was donated to the city by Paul Goodloe McIntyre. The statue depicts Meriwether Lewis, William Clark, and Sacagawea, their Shoshone Indian guide, and commemorates the U.S. government's overland expedition to the Pacific coast. Sculptor Charles Keck was a well-respected artist of the time. He was known for monumental sculptures and portrait busts. In 1996, the statue was listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register. In 1997, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 2017, West Main Street Historic District was established and added to the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register, with the statue identified as a contributing element. In 2006, the city established the locally designated Downtown Architectural Design Control District, which includes this section of West Main Street. However, the statue was not designated as a contributing structure. In 2007, a coalition of local residents appealed to City Council to address the issue of Sacagawea's depiction on the statue. Council directed the Historic Resources Committee to devise language for a marker to be placed at the site. After consulting with multiple individuals, including Rosina George and Emma George, both descendants of Sacagawea, the committee purchased a 12-inch by 16-inch bronze marker and with the following text. Sacagawea, this plaque is dedicated to Sacagawea, whose contribution of traditional and cultural knowledge with courage and bravery earned her recognition in the chronicles of American history. Sacagawea was a Lemhi Shoshone Agaidika, born in Salmon, Idaho in 1788. She was the only female to travel on the long, arduous journey with the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1805 to 1806. Sacagawea served as an ambassador, bridging relations amongst nations. Her contribution to the people of today and the future generations can be identified as a symbol of unity and peace for all people. And the plaque is finished with Rosina George and Emma George, great nieces of Sacagawea, March 2008. And I think there's one more. And on June 19th, 2009, the marker was unveiled in a ceremony that included members of the Monacan Nation and the Lemhi Shoshone tribe, including descendants of Sacagawea. And next, Jeanette Janacek will discuss some of the elements of the statue relative to West Main Street.
Good morning. I am one of the project managers for the West Main Streetscape project. And for those that don't live here, this is imagined as a streetscape project where we are taking the existing right-of-way, we are reallocating it so that we provide a better pedestrian experience. We're moving a little bit of the parking, making sure we have safe intersections for everyone, good bike lanes. This corridor connects from the west, the University of Virginia, travels through the center of town and connects to downtown. And at the eastern end is the area that we're talking about, and it is the statue and what we're envisioning for this intersection. This intersection is currently 5 legs. It could be a bit confusing. We are suggesting moving the right turn lane that is to the right of the statue and moving it to the left to create a more pedestrian friendly plaza, basically. So there would be additional landscaping, more seating, and with that, we are requesting the shift of the statue from its current location 20 feet to the southwest. The pictures here are showing where we're envisioning the statue would need to be while we to make all of these new design changes. And then the next picture is a depiction of what we're expecting the overall design to be and what we're trying to accomplish. And with that, are there any questions for myself or Jeanette or Jeff?
So not at this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Buena, greetings everyone. Sambay Chua. It is a great honor to be here, and what I'm going to say, I'm saying on behalf of my ancestor. And for those of you, I would like to thank Guy Lopez, and I ask you to join the Eastern Tribal Representative. Can you please be seated there, please? You had a vision. You had a vision, and as a Native American living here in the East, you saw this statue for what it was. Grace Softier, thank you for hosting us while we are here. Mayor, thank you. Council, thank you. 10 years ago, I came. 10 years ago, I was here. And before I start, and before I say what I have to say, I would like to thank my ancestors, my mother, my father's lineage, which entrusted us with making this decision here today. We as Agaidikas are here today on behalf of our familial ancestor, Sacagawea. I'm pleased to be here along with our family to Charlottesville to discuss the statue of Lewis and Clark with the cowering and recoiling image of our ancestor, Sacagawea. A decade ago, in 2009, we came here to place a plaque on the statue to alleviate the outwardly offensive depiction. I can say that when I saw it in person for the first time, I was very shocked. For you see, my ancestor, Sacagawea, has many, many images throughout this country and throughout this nation, and my family and I were able to see them firsthand. This statue in Charlottesville was the worst we have ever seen. We, the familial descendants and people of Sacagawea, are very pleased that you are addressing this offensive interpretation and portrayal of our ancestor. We understand that the statue was originally made in 1919, and as we all know, it was during a time period of intolerance, misinformation, discrimination, and witless perspectives of people of color and America's indigenous peoples. In addition, it was during a time period that governments elevated the achievements of dominant society's heroes and their histories. In 1919, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were Virginia's heroes. But Sacagawea was a woman and a Native American. We do not know the artist's history and intent, but we believe it is time to put the statue where it belongs. It belongs in a place where we can inscribe that this depiction of a woman and of Sacagawea does not hold truth today. That it is an image of the past when women in America did not have rights and Native Americans were not recognized as citizens of the United States. And the depiction of Sacagawea was a part of America's indifferent and heartless history. We believe that no statue today should cause a citizen to hang their head in shame or cause a child to question their worth. Virginia's indigenous inhabitants and America's first people should feel united, accepted, and understood when they enter the city of Charlottesville. We are requesting that this statue be placed in a place where it will become an object of discussion of America's intolerant past. We understand that some places are being considered to house this statue. So be it. We are requesting that in its place should be a historical depiction of Sacagawea's true contributions, wisdom, and undaunted courage. We believe that she should be placed with these two Virginians. We believe that this combined team of two Virginian men and a Shoshone woman have shown that together, as men and women, we can all reach an unreachable place. That we together can achieve a united destiny to succeed and bring humankind together in tolerance and triumph over condescending pride. And that we today can leave this as a lasting legacy and a teaching for our seventh generation to come. They must never again have to hang their heads in shame. 2 years ago, the world witnessed an appalling gathering in Charlottesville. Today, we will remember that as a blemish. We remember that blemish of that event, but we need to put it in the past where it belongs. Much like this statue and others like it, take it down and put it in a hall of shame of past discrimination and antipathy. Let us, for the sake of our children, our upcoming generations, show images of integrity, equity, and tolerance in our public forums. And through this discussion and meeting on this date, may it be said that Sacagawea, along with Lewis and Clark, brought peace and unity between races and change for a better America and tomorrow. Us.
So that opens us up for just to have a discussion, and counselors, for any questions or statements that you may have.
You're welcome. Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. Abramson.
Yes.
And what I hear is that there is a new image to be made, a new monument to be made with the same players as the old statue, but infused with new meaning and new understandings. And I just wanted to make sure I understood that is the call, not only removal of what is there, but a replacement with something else that still tells that story of that journey, but in a truthful way. Yes.
I'm going to have Destina share a little bit about Sacagawea and the role that she played in our nation's history. She's going to give a couple of perspectives on her role with
most people traditionally, how we've been saying Sacagawea, but Sacagawea, different names, so forth about her. What people forget is that Sacagawea, she was a teenager, she was a very young girl when she went on this journey with these men, with the Corps of Discovery. This young girl, her life, she was taken away from her home, her family, and brought somewhere alien, different, among other people, and then bartered off to a way older man. In today's standards, this is something that we wouldn't we wouldn't want for our child or our beloved child or anything like that. We would make sure that they were given to someone that would take care of them. Unfortunately, if you read the journals and stuff like that, Charbonneau was not that man. He was very abusive, treated her badly, but I could say that these Lewis and Clark were very good men. They tried to help her in this journey and support her, even though they could see that her own husband was not a very good husband. But this young woman, for us younger generation, you know, how we look upon her and we look upon her contribution to this nation, it is, for as a woman and a young girl, it's inspiring. It shows that as a young woman, you can go out there and make great changes, make great contributions to our great nation here. No matter what your background is. She's that representation. As for a First Nation or Indigenous person, it also confirms, you know, our upbringing and our traditions and our beliefs of always being that helping, being compassionate, and being welcoming. And it's throughout history, you've seen that with the First Nation people here in the United States, with the welcoming of those that came across the Great Waters first. We welcomed everybody, hospitality, and her contribution to this country was great. Going to the West, a party of a group of men in any other culture would be looked upon as, you could say, a war party. And that Corps of Discovery probably would have been attacked. But just because of the presence of Sacagawea and her son, it showed to the rest of those tribes out there that this was a party that came in peace. And that's what she represented when she came with Lewis and Clark. And with her, also her contributions of the medicines in the area, the land areas in the northwest areas of our people. This, again, was also another great contribution. But overall, you know, in regards to the statue, this is my first time here in Charlottesville, and I could see how, as far as an Indigenous person, and seeing that statue, and I could say for myself, just the first time I really got to see it in person, it did bring shame. It made me feel sadness and worthlessness. And that's not how I was brought up. And so for me, it is a wrong depiction of, you know, of Sacagawea, of who she was, but it's a wrong depiction of our Indigenous women as well. We are not brought up to be like that. And, you know, like I said, it is a little bit, it was disturbing to me. But as this younger generation, what my mother explained, though, is that we want to create, with anything that we do, and wherever we live, in whatever city, and especially here in Charlottesville, you want to promote that positiveness, that unity. You know, this country was built upon, you know, great ideas, contributions from all ethnicities. And it's that unity of these different backgrounds, of these different ethnicities of people that contributed to the, you know, to our country, that makes this country so great. And so we want to promote our country in the best light possible, and something that unifies us. And I think that statue, you know, it represents a past, which is the past. But we need to start looking forward to a greater future. And with Sacagawea, I mean, her history, her life, and in reality, her short life, she did so much. And it's how one told me, it's not how long you live, but how you live it. Mm-hmm. And she lived it the best way she did. And, you know, as we as a family and descendants, we are so proud of her. Mm-hmm. And for her, that's our inspiration of what we do in our lives. And it's also our motivation in what we do for our own people and for our country. So thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Emma now.
We'll let Willow speak first.
Hello, everybody. So I just wanted to make a few comments about that statue out there. This also is my first time out to Charlottesville, and it is also my first time viewing the statue in person. I have seen the pictures in the past, and I would like to say that I also feel the same as my older sister and my family. I am a woman, I am an Agaidika, and I was raised in a matriarchal, matrilineal society in which the women are the people who call together your ceremonies. The women are the people who sanction the decisions of the leadership. The women are also the people who have that knowledge of how to take care of and how to survive. And one of the things that I noticed in viewing the statue is it almost minimizes the great contribution that Sacagawea, my ancestor, contributed to the pioneering of the United States of America. It almost depicts her as if she is a subservient in a monkey position. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize in what my older sister had explained is that throughout Indian tribes across the nation, that would have been viewed as a war party, a group of men. If it wasn't for Sacagawea showing Lewis and Clark how to communicate with these other tribes in a diplomatic way, I do not think they would have made it across that great journey. There are many accounts within the journals where Sacagawea informed them of how to put the bisha. You'll see that on us right now, the red paint. This is protection. This is sacredness. This represents who we are. When Lewis and Clark had met those women, that elder, the Shoshones, one of the things that they used as a protection was they put that bisha on that elder woman. When the Shoshones had met Lewis and Clark, by all means, they would not have treated them as welcoming had those women not informed our tribal people, our leaders, Kamilwat, that these individuals do not mean harm. They put a display of protection upon our heads. They showed us that they want to protect us, that they mean no harm. This paint is a representation of our spirituality, of who we are. It connects us as earthly human beings with the sacredness of Mother Earth and all of the cosmos. When Creator looks down upon us, Creator will look at us and know who we are by the red paint that we wear on our heads. So one of the things I wanted to say is I feel the same as my older sister, the same as my mother. I am a mother myself. I have a 2-year-old little girl. And one of the things that I was taught is that we must always speak the truth, whether the truth hurts. The most important thing and one of the human values across the world that we all share is the importance of integrity, the importance of truth-telling, the importance of humility, the importance of kindness, the importance of love. And I wanted to say that when I see the statue, it depicts an enslaved, subservient, almost monkey-positioned individual. When this is an individual who helped take care of a group of men. This was a young girl leading a group of men across treacherous territory. This was a young woman who knew where tribal villages were, who was raised within a leadership. Amongst our people, our leader is our Degwani. What that leader is like and the way I can explain it is amongst the Greeks, they always had, I don't know the name of that individual, but they always had an individual who was a diplomat and who would speak for the people, who would actually communicate with whoever the leadership was, but would go out and provide that oratory, who would have that strength and that skill in establishing interpersonal relationships, knowing how to communicate with individuals of many different cultures, knowing how to communicate in such a dynamic way that they could get the point across. So one of the things that is important to remember about our ancestor Sacagawea is that she came from one of those leadership families. And amongst our people, your ways are passed down. You're born into a family of either medicine people. You're born into a family of leaders. You're born into a family who knows how to scrape the hides and make the homes. You're born into a family of hunters. Different individuals, you're raised in that way. We all had our role in society. And one of the things that is very important to remember and to also show is that as an individual, as a young girl, as a teenager, she knew how to communicate and she knew where those tribal leaders were. And she was raised in how to understand and communicate those other tribes. And that's one of the most important things that you can learn about a tribal leader is that those who were chiefs, they were actually almost like those orators. They were those who could speak. They were those who could make people feel what they were saying in their heart. They knew how to speak. They knew how to talk. They knew the values and the cultures of the other tribes, how to go in and exactly how do I communicate to this group of individuals that we mean no harm? How do we talk to these leaderships? How do we get across this great journey in a way that brings us no harm? And those were some of the important skills that should be recognized and displayed. But not only that, the statue depicts our ancestor as if she was not an important role in this expedition. It depicts our ancestor as if she was a dog going along on the trip. And I know that there is a call out in this new generation that our leadership support human values. Like I said, the human values of humility, the human values of kindness, of equity, of caring for one another, of not degrading one another, of not using the, I don't even know how to say this, of not exemplifying the racial imbalance. And if you look at the time in 1919, Native Americans, indigenous people, were not viewed as human citizens. If you ever go back and you look at what type of communication was out there were communication for scalps. They were still trading scalps. That's why you'll hear a lot of Indian people talk about the Redskins. What the traders used to do, you could get money for Redskins. The bounty hunters, you could get money for Redskins. What were the Coonskins? There were different names that they used. So at this time in history, when that statue was developed, that was a time when my people, indigenous people, were not viewed as human beings. There was a resounding statement that went across the country by Henry Pratt. And that statement was, kill the Indian, save the man. Almost as if to say, if you were an Indian, you were not viewed as human. The only way you would be viewed as a human is if you became like a colonial citizen, as if to say that our culture, our language, our indigenous knowledge is nothing. And one of the other things I would also like to say is that as a mother, I would not want for my own child or children to actually see this statue. I haven't showed it to them. Just because it is an inaccurate, it is a wrongful, it is a degrading, it is a dehumanizing, very upsetting depiction that almost minimizes the great contributions to this expedition that my ancestor had contributed. And I want to ask, that there is a major consideration, a large consideration, that the depiction isn't displayed in such a public manner, I guess, as if to tell history. We as humankind uphold integrity as one of the most important things. And I feel that the statue lacks integrity. It lacks the depiction of the values of truth-telling. It lacks the depiction of equity. It lacks an accurate historical account. It not only is telling a lie, but it's displaying a lie as if lies are okay. And I'm telling you, lies are not okay. And at this day and age, I'm very proud to be a young person coming up in this day and age when there is a lot of truth-telling happening, where there is a lot of movement towards equity, towards unity, and for upholding of the human values, whether it mean we as a society have to come together and make these changes or talk about them. I'm grateful that I am a part of this discussion in this day and age, and I'm grateful to be here and share with each and every one of you the words that I have to share. And with that, I would like to pass it on to my Auntie Emma so she could kind of share some words that she might have regarding this statue.
And I wanted to address the council there. The reason that we're sharing this with you is because we want you to see our perspectives. And you were saying, are you asking for another image? And I think it is rightfully so. But right at this moment, we want to share with you this perspective so it helps us to make a better decision. Okay, Emma?
Today, I asked for clarity, for things to be right. On behalf of my ancestor, our ancestor, Sacagawea, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our ancestors, and we are cognizant of them. And that is a part of our teaching. The teachings that we hold, they've been here far before 500 years ago, before the foundation of this country. And we hold them dear, and we are here today because of them, as our ancestor Sacagawea. Sacagawea had knowledge that was rewritten by Lewis and Clark. Your geology, your biology, all the information you have in your museums, the knowledge that you received about this arduous journey, Lewis and Clark expedition, you can thank our ancestor of the botany. And through that, our ancestor, she held dear to her teachings throughout her life. She didn't forget them, just as each one of you. Your ancestry, when you came to this country, from Germany, from England, Sweden, those ancestries have good teachings. And through that, they were not forgotten, and she shared them with Lewis and Clark on this journey. And one of our teachings, as stated earlier, our society was a democratic society. She come from a democratic society. And in that society, each and every one had the opportunity to speak, from the childest to the oldest person. And one of our teachings, original teachings, was to have respect. And that respect begins with oneself. And so each and every one, when you go amongst Native people, our elders, we hold them in esteem because of their wisdom. And the young people, because for each life is precious. And so everyone had a chance to speak and have what they had to say. It wasn't a group of people or anybody specific. And it was a cooperative where everybody worked together in peace and in harmony and in unity. And that's what Sacagawea represented. She represented peace and unity. You recall that gold coin where the hands are shaking? For the foundation of this country, I think some people forgot our station here on this United States. Become self-indulgent, not caring for your brothers and sisters, forgot the teachings. And because of her knowledge and her wisdom, she was able to help the expedition. And she helped with the foundation of this country, the founding of this country. And this morning, I went out there to look at that statue. It did not make me feel good at all. I didn't feel shame. When I looked at that statue, this word come to my mind. It said, was he white? But that's not a good word. It was humiliating. I love my people. I love my children. I love my grandchildren. As every American, I want that for all our children. And I hope you do as well. For all of us have value in this life. It's not just this one person or that one person. We all matter. And that's how our people were. You know, we cared for each other. We took care of each other. Everybody had something to offer. Everybody had a skill. Everybody had a place to do stuff. But we helped each other. And I asked that that statue be removed. I would rather not have it there at all. Because it doesn't depict the truth. And I'm sure if you asked Lewis and Clark today, they'd probably be appalled too. Because she was their friend. And I hope that you find it in your hearts to reconsider this, and that for this community, you know, I hope for peace. I hope for harmony as a society for each and every one, and for all your children and your grandchildren, because we're only on this Mother Earth for a moment in time, and I would like to see justice, peace, harmony, and unity. What a beautiful world this would be. And please honor our ancestor today for what she has done in her short life. As each of you have children, I'm sure, and grandchildren that are young, that are out making their way in this world today, you hope for the best. And to see them accomplish, it brings you joy. And so let's have that hope for each other. Let's hope for good things for one another. Let's change the image of Charlottesville from what has occurred recently. I was looking on the internet, typed up Charlottesville. The first thing I seen on there was not good. It made me sad for the people here. But let's make a change. Let's start today with the sun that rose today. Let's make it good. We have that ability today. But to have respect, it's not to be disrespectful of the efforts of our forefathers. for what they've done as well. So again, on behalf of our ancestor, Sacagawea, let's make our foundation strong on this continent. We have that opportunity. We have that opportunity for our future generations. And what we can help for them as well, not just for us or in the past, but for the future as well. And again, I ask that you remove this statue. It's very hurtful. It's, we've been told that people have come by, little children, and as Willow had said, she would not bring her child to see this. And when we drove by there, there were cars going by there, there were students going through there. That is a negative educational perspective, in my opinion. Charlottesville, the university is located right by there. Let's change the course that has been taken and correct it for truth. Thank you.
I just wanted to add on one little thing is, I know right now in the world, we have a young girl who is probably the same age as Sacagawea. Her name is Greta. I don't know how to say her last name, Thunberg. I highly doubt that anybody would like to see an image portrayed of her contribution to history in that manner. You know, and that's one of the relations or correlations that I would like to exemplify is the same type of a contribution, whether it's through knowledge or whether it's through speaking or whether it's through leading. You know, I kind of think that the image of Greta would not be much appreciated by her family or her ancestors if she was depicted in a manner as if she was a dog, as if she was a monkey, as if she was less than human, as if she was subservient, when this young woman is a leader in our world today. You know, but I just wanted to put that out there because sometimes it's easier for us to understand the great impact it might have on the mentality of others, of other young women. You know, if there was an image of Greta portrayed in the same inaccurate manner. And so that was one of the correlations I wanted to make sure that I shared with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, so Mayor, let's start the questions. And that was a good question, what you said. You said remove the statue, but it sounds like you want another image in its place. Okay, taxpayers? No. No, but what I'm saying is, I think, Mayor, I think that replacing the image with another image, if it's financially possible, should be a must. Because it is a physical and visual change of what we are actually trying to say about the image. And rather than looking at the image there were some people that were saying to us, well, should we have an image of Sacagawea? No. I think we should have the two Virginians. I think we should have Sacagawea, but telling the truth.
The other point, Mayor, I'd like to add is that Sacagawea was a sergeant of the Army. She's recognized as a sergeant of the Army as well.
Thank you. And Chief, if you all have any comments about, and part of this discussion and why it was important to make sure that there were, local tribes representative, and hopefully this is a conversation that will make sure that Indigenous people from all over would want, to participate. But one of the questions I asked, and I'm here respectfully listening and taking it in and hearing you as clearly as I can, and I do have some comments, but I think it's important that when we get to the part of the discussion about what's next, that we are also, having the discussion about like not just maybe that particular location and that statue, but what and how other and local tribes feel about how they are represented in the area and what that would look like for us to truly be able to honor moving forward too.
Well, excuse me, I feel like I'm coming down with something, but you ladies have said a lot of things that I was sitting here feeling too. I've never really liked that statue. I have 11 grandchildren, and I honestly would not bring any of my grandchildren up here to see that statue. And I'm as proud of my heritage as anybody in this room. But as these ladies have stated, she should be out front. Lewis and Clark should be behind her. Yes, they got the expedition. They planned it a little bit. But when they got through planning, they looked at her and said, okay, now which way do we go? She got them across the country. If it hadn't been for her, it would have probably been another 50 years before they went to the places they went, met the people they met, and it did bring peace to the area. I'm ashamed of the statue myself because it is not true history. I'm a kind of a history buff. We got many statues in the state of Virginia, and there are a lot of talk about taking them down. But I think every one of them should be looked at on a one-to-one basis. If it predicts the history, the true history, then they should stay. But that is one that definitely needs to be changed. And I think I speak for every Monacan in the Monacan tribe. I would like to see a statue up here that I would be proud to bring my grandchildren and say, this is a native lady. You know, especially my granddaughters. You can be great too, but not with what we got now. And I do feel sorry that we have to come here to do something because we have done several things with that statue, and every time we've had a gathering about it, the same thing's coming up. When are we going to do something about this instead of just giving it lip service? Yes, I know it costs money. Everything costs money. But money ain't the thing we're talking about here. We're talking about the true history of this country and the contribution that the native people have gave. It's hard to say how this country would be changed if she didn't step up and said, okay, I will help you. We wouldn't be talking about Lewis and Clark and the great expedition they had. Not at all. And it's time we, and I say we because I'm a taxpayer too, to do something about this statue and get something up out that all of us can be very proud of. And we want to bring our grandchildren. These ladies would want to bring their grandchildren here and show and say, look here, This is your ancestors. You know, that's what we need to do. Let's quit giving it lip service. We do this with so many things in this state. We need to put our best foot forward and do what is right and change that statute. I don't want to be 20 years down the road if I'm still living and another group coming here asking the same thing, because it's ridiculous to have to keep asking and asking for do something that is right and respectful. That's what I'm saying, and I think I'm speaking for the Monacan people. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Are you asking about a native perspective?
Yes.
You're asking, well, the Monacan people have been overlooked in the state of Virginia. We've been paper genocided out. We look differently from our cousins who are in the West because we've been occupied for a much longer time. You know, the statue is a part of our history, but there's history of Virginian Indians prior to Sacagawea. So if you're going to tell the truth, you need to tell the whole line of truth about all the natives, including her contribution, and hers is the most documented. But we are still here. We still fight. We still stay. We've been secluded in the mountains, protected from society, but we stand with our cousins from the West. That's what they want. They want the statue moved. They should have the statue moved. That's their ancestor. That's the image of their ancestor.
Any other?
I'll say one more thing, and then I'm going to shut up for the rest of the day. Teresa makes a good point. Here in Virginia, the history of Virginia Indians is it's a very dark mark on the English people that came here and settled this country. Racial integrity law in the 1920s basically said there were no Indians in Virginia. Two of the oldest reservations in this country is in Virginia, Pamunkey and Mattaponi. They still exist today. But in the 20s, there were no Indians here, according to the records. And we had to fight that battle up until the 1960s. I, and this lady here beside me, wasn't allowed in public schools until 1963. Before that, if you got a 7th grade education at the Monacan Museum, is where the school log cabin was built in the 1860s. That's where you went. 7th grade, you got out and got a job. You weren't allowed in the local schools for education. And yes, there are other things that we need to do to show Virginia history and the Indian contribution. But you know, there are 1 or 2 small statues up, but this one's been here since 1919. Let's start and get this one correct, and then we can talk about others that will show the history of Virginia Indians. You know, everybody in here should be proud of the contributions the Native people have given, because this country wouldn't be the shape it's in today if it hadn't been for those contributions. Code talkers, World War II. You know, I don't know if there's a statue of anything about that, but we might be going around speaking German now if it hadn't been for those guys, or Japanese. You know, so, but let's start with this one. Let's get this one right, and then we can make sure that the rest that follow will be right too. Thank you.
Are there? So, and I want to sit with my thoughts a bit more. It would be a challenge for me, but we're an entire city and there are 4 other council members, to know how African and descendants of Africans on American soil were treated, and to put a statue up that would still today commission to honor Lewis and Clark would be a challenge from me. But my colleagues, and we have 3 new council members coming on, that is something that they may be able to do. I do know how to honor people and honor wishes, and that was the intention of having you all here and having this discussion. I will say that where I am now in my life, when I think about correcting wrongs, I think about what would Native people have put there if they had been the ones in charge of putting something to represent themselves there at the time, or even now. And would your first thought have been to include Lewis and Clark, or would your first thought have been to honor your history and your contributions to the world, and let it be reflective when people see those images of your greatness? And so those are the thoughts that I'm having. But again, we are here to learn and listen and figure it out.
I have a question, and I'm very grateful for everything that you've shared and for your journey here. And it is an opportunity to learn, I think, for all of us. There's been such a history with this statue and a lot of discussion. And Ms. Abrahamson, I wanted to ask, because you sent us an email in June, because we had the discussion on the dais, and it sounds like things have changed, which is for us to hear, But you. Because I cited it when we had the discussion on the dais, and I just would like to understand about what, because you said, I believe, that the statue should be replaced back to the site once the repairs are made. I'm asserting this because a decade ago we came across the country to bring together people, commemorate the history. The statue stands for that unity, harmony, shared history, and event. I personally don't have strong feelings with the statue. I'm just wanting to understand.
Yes, not the actual statue, but what I was trying to express at that time was a statue, not that one. And I was quickly trying to respond because you were having a meeting.
Okay.
And I should have clarified that.
Okay.
And that's what I was expressing. Now, I think we have this opportunity now to really talk about this. And we want to make, the mayor expressed something about Lewis and Clark per se. So I'm here to listen. And I think the first thing we need to do is, do you have a truck and a chain? No, I'm just. But, that's how insistent we are about having that particular statue. But, there's people that like to hold memorable.
It is history.
I can't say it because I'm a fluent speaker in my language and I have a hard time with L's, but it's a word that says memorabilia. Thank you. Some people are prone to hoard those. And so if we're here to listen to all sides, hoard it in the closet or way far away from the sight of the public. But in reality, as I expressed in my letter, for those out west, when we hear about Charlottesville, we saw the KKK, we saw people getting run over, we saw hate. And for us out there, we were thinking, did people from Charlottesville invite those folks in? Are we safe out there in Charlottesville? This is history taking place right here.
Mm-hmm.
That was history, and that will remain in history. So will this. So if we're going to make a decision now, and we're going to make a change, we need to make that change real defined. What are we going to do to preserve the integrity and the truth today?
One of the other comments is I also wanted to make is that there was some comments regarding African American history, and I think that the truth in that aspect and the reparations to be made to those individuals or even their ancestors and the honoring of the great contribution that the African Americans have provided the United States and this world is very, 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 very important. And I also wish not to overshadow that. You know, I think the main thing and the point that we want to get across is not that one group deserves more representation than another, or anything in that aspect by all means. It's more of a discussion about the truth-telling of history, because there is a lack of truth-telling in history. You know, there is a lack of truth-telling in what was really happening, the human trafficking that was happening around that time. And I think the same story here is almost the same story as that coincides, because we were dealing with a young woman who was a slave, who was sold, you know, and I do not want to overshadow that. And if there are recommendations of having a display of the racial equity, but then also not overshadowing those contributions, because in the United States, a lot of our indigenous people, when you look at history books, it's almost like we don't exist. When you look at the history of the United States, it's almost like we're not there. Sometimes I'll hear different things, such as we were not involved in the civil rights and that type of thing, but we were not humans, considered humans. We were considered animals, actually. And they still have us housed in the Department of Interior, which houses land, animals, and resources. That's where we still are right now. We are in the Department of Interior of the United States because we are still just a afterthought. And I don't want to overshadow that aspect, because I know that Virginia has a very, very rich history about what was going on around that time. And one of the sentiments that came to mind in that is when this statue was erected, you know, it was erected after a time when there was a North and a South fractionated United States. And it was fractionated because one side wanted to uphold and maintain the privileges that one group one group had over over our African American relatives. And this place was right in the middle of it, you know, and one of the sentiments that comes to mind is that at that time, things changed, you know, and it's almost like well, if we can't attack one group of people, let's degrade another, you know, and that's one of the thoughts that came to my mind when you look at that statue. It's kind of like, well, these guys aren't humans anyway, you know. We weren't included as citizens of the United States until 1924. We were not allowed to vote until the 1960s. We were not given the right to do what we were out there doing and smudging until 1978. We were still considered subhumans at the time until 1924. In our own land, in our own spaces. But I do want to say in the sentiments, not to overshadow the long history that has happened in those aspects, and that there is a need for reparations regarding the equity of humankind, regarding the integrity of human values, and ensuring that that truth-telling is out there, that the truth is told, that the truth is shared. And the sentiments of not to have Lewis and Clark, I understand that as well.
And I think, yes, and I think if we are going to make that change, we can literally just put her up. And in reality, like my daughter was saying, we're also here to address humanity, not just for ourselves, but we're here to address it for red, yellow, black, and white. And I'm going to say this because for us out west, you know, to put up a statue of Hitler, just for the sake of those who supported the Nazis and want it up, is ridiculous. And for us to see these Confederate statues just for the sake of those, but knowing that it hurts so many people, we're addressing this as well. Mm-hmm. We're not, that's no less than. In America, Charlottesville, if we're going to make a change, let's make a change. Let's make a change.
Thank you. So we were going to have public comment during the lunch discussion and towards the end of the day, but you're up. But just for the rest of the public, we're just going to do it at another time.
Mayor Walker, a really quick comment, and it addresses and brings a lot of things together to make it cohesive. During the trip, there was also an individual named York.
Yes.
And he was
Yes.
of African ancestry. And I know you all had mentioned maybe presenting a new statue that showed Lewis and Clark, Sacagawea. But to get the whole picture included, if it were representations from several groups coming together, it could include York as well. It's just something to throw out there to think. And that would show that people, as we all know, no matter what your background, we can work together and we can accomplish great things.
Definitely.
So
And
I love, all the time everybody's talking, my sister talking, I'm thinking about, we could put York in there. You know? Well, and as a young person, I remember being in elementary school at Pioneer Elementary in Salmon, Idaho, and the favorite parts I loved reading about was about Sacagawea, because that was, who I was from. But I also loved reading about the contributions of York. And I'll tell you one thing, York, all the Indians out west, they were fascinated with him. that's what they documented with the documentation about him, because, you know, of his hair, the color of his skin, you know, he was, to us, he was exotic, and actually, some of the tribes, kind of married their women to him.
Yeah.
For a couple nights, you know, but it was because of this, uniqueness of this human. And for me, as a young person, anytime in history, I used to love reading anybody of color, no matter whether it be Indian, African American, Asian. To me, it was the contribution of our minorities. So, no, the person came up there, that would be an awesome. I was thinking about, like, why couldn't it be a statue of our two, you know, the two famous, you know, Virginians, you know? But, you know, I think he was, who was he with? Was he with Lewis? Was he Lewis's?
He was Clark.
Clark's? Yeah. He was with Clark, and you read the Corps of Discovery and the documentation and his contributions too as well. It's really, to me, it's wonderful, because it's just the contribution of all these men and this woman and her child going on this great journey, and something that representation of the contributions of these different ethnic backgrounds would be wonderful. That's just my thought.
Mayor Walker, I just have a question, but a comment too. Because right now, the opportunity that's presenting itself is that the statue's going to have to be moved, just for technical reasons. And the question is how far away it gets moved. And that's kind of where we are.
Far, far away.
And so I would like to know from our staff, particularly our historic preservation planner, what are the technical issues involved, because there are several different designations of landmark status. If it's not in that vicinity, just need to know these things. And then second, it does strike me that of what to replace that statue with is a bigger conversation that needs to bring in even more people. And that's and I'm going to be off council in 7 weeks. So that what is put in place there, I think I personally don't see how we can make that decision today.
Right.
But I do feel it's within our power to make an informed decision about the placement, where that statue goes today, provided we get the complete picture of the logistics of from that legal perspective.
River? Oh
No! We have the Lewis and Clark Exploratory Center that's already said that they're willing to take it, and that's been a big challenge of how do you still keep that history that was mistelling history, that's a lesson in and of itself too. But your question about the prominence of this location, fortunately this does not get all hung up with the Virginia current state law about it being a war memorial. It's not. So there is a lot more freedom, like at the local level, with this statute, and I think we can take advantage of that. And but there's still some logistical questions. So Mayor, if it's now, it would be great. Are you prepared?
Yeah, you can share that. I just have a quick comment about, while I didn't think that we would make a decision about what the statue would be replaced with, I want us to acknowledge that we are hearing different perspectives and not do what we normally do, especially when we're talking about statues in this community, that the decision is one-sided when it's made.
I would like to tack on to Councilor Galvin's question, because there was a couple of comments that you all made about the history and about Lewis and Clark and so on. I'd be very curious about your thoughts about it going to this Lewis and Clark area that we have. And if it were, what would be a way to have it be there that would respect and honor the perspectives that you all have shared with us, if that's possible. I would really,
think
because that is something that could, like, practically happen. I don't know about the transit and all the hills. I mean, there's all these things that come into account.
Is there a hall of shame in that center? No, but really, in reality, I think if the statue was there, I think there could even be a correlating exhibit that really shows what she contributed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It could be placed there and explained that this was a perspective when
Mm-hmm.
reality she contributed to the botany, the biology, the geology, geography, anthropology, sociology of the expedition. I meant every piece of knowledge that they documented was her knowledge. Even the names that were given to the tribes was the language of our people. And so what we're saying is that maybe the center itself could pivot on that and have a truth exhibit, an exhibit of truth. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And can I just ask, what are your feelings about the current plaque that you were part of the group, and how that should that also be?
I think it should be included as part of the history.
Okay.
And I think we have this opportune time to create discourse and to tell the truth.
Okay. Thank you.
Added on to that, if it was moved and placed in an area that was dedicated to telling the truth of why the statue is there, you know, why it was removed from over there or changed or whatever the plans are, but why it was removed, why it was placed over here, and the reasons, I think, is really important. You know, the reason, and also about what it represents, you know, and it represents supremacy. And I'm just putting that out there, but that's kind of is a representation and a monument of that, where there was other groups and other nations or and they were like dogs or like monkeys going along, and that's what it looks like on the current statue. But I think explaining why the statue was removed, the reasons, the connotations that go along with it, and displaying that as just here's why, here's the reasons, here's what the truth in history is, and this represents a time in American history when there was still a lot of disparities amongst racial and ethnic groups. But I think, you know, just explaining that, because a lot of young people might not understand, or they might say, well, what's wrong with it? You know, but having the accuracy in history would be important if it is moved elsewhere, and I wouldn't be opposed to it being placed elsewhere and used as a discussion, or used to also explain, but then also give hope to humankind and humanity, because we all do the same things as human beings. We all need food, we all need water, we all need love, we all need our family, we all need our loved ones, we all need the kindness of one another in order to survive, you know?
I'd also like to add to that is the leaders here of Charlottesville, representatives of this area as well as the state of Virginia, you are in a position now as far as what changes or what changes you will not make for this state. That will go down in the annals of history. And so think things over. Are you going to make changes, or are you going to stay the same in what was presented to you today? Because that, you're asking, well, what history do you want? So, in a sense, it's your history as well when you make these decisions as far as that statue.
Do you mind if I ask one other question? Because I know that we're going to get asked it, and I want to
Yes.
take advantage of while you all are here. And I know that
Do
came
it.
up 10 years ago,
Yes.
which is the whole tracking argument that when the whole meetings were done 10 years ago, that because we got a ton of emails and a lot of comments
Yes.
that she was in this tracking position being depicted in that role. And I just want to know how we should, what your response to that is. How do we respond to that? Because it'll come up as this comes up on the dais.
When we
you know,
came
where
10 years ago, right?
Yeah, so the idea that she's
Okay.
depicted tracking
When
and how, what's our response to that?
And 10 years ago, when we came, the first time I saw the statue, I was appalled. And I came as part of a group. I wasn't the primary spokesman of the group, but I was part of the group. And from the understanding that was given to us was there was an unwillingness to remove the statue. So what can we do to make this ugly, ugly statue to explain why it appears as it was placed? And so the plaque was considered, the plaque was requested, and that we come and at least make a step to appease the image. And I think Guy can give you more information on that, because at that time it was steps. It's like anything, if you're going to make a change, it's in steps. And it's now taken us a decade to go to this big major step. And 10 years ago was 10 years ago when different voters, different perspectives, 10 years later now. And so when we came, we had the idea that the statue was solid and permanent. So we wanted to find some way to make it, to explain why she appeared animalistic. And Guy, what do you have a comment on that? If you remember, if you can recall that time period.
Yes. Yeah, we went over this in the city council meeting, you know, what happened at that time. Mary Joy Scala was there. She was here earlier at the meeting here. There was just no consideration of the idea that they would remove the statue. And so that's all that we could get was a plaque. And we had hoped that a relationship would be built between the Lemhi Shoshone and the city of Charlottesville. That, you know, we had ideas like we'd hoped there would be, you know, a lot more exchange than what's, you know, it's taken 10 years. We'd like to see programs, you know, something more substantive, you know, like in the city of Charlottesville, educational programs, you know, that provide indigenous knowledge, understanding that, you know, Virginia Indian tribes have a central, you know, role here, and it should be prioritized because, you know, the city doesn't have programs for, you know, that respect indigenous peoples, you know, and the role and the relationship. But now, you know, in the 10 years, there's been with federal recognition of the 6 Virginia Indian tribes. There's a lot more activity at the University of Virginia. We're building, we're talking about establishing a UVA Center for Indigenous Studies. We're trying to do, to respect the protocols of how institutions, governmental institutions relate to Indian nations, and indigenous people's voices. Where do we fit into the university or in the curriculum? All that we had in mind, 10 years ago, but it wasn't, we went before the committee that Mr. Werner now chairs. They weren't going to, they were so far away from that, it was not even going to be considered. So we got whatever we could at that time. And we just prayed that something, we opened the door, that something would evolve. And thanks, Creator, that there's something happening.
I had an email from Rosina, and I will read it at lunch when I have it in front of me. But she said that when she came 10 years before, she did what she could for her ancestor by adding the plaque, and she felt that it was the most right thing that they could do at the time for their ancestor and for their women and children. But she says in hindsight, it may have done more harm than good, because it made the city of Charlottesville feel that the family liked the statue, respected it, and felt good about it. But traditional people, we do what we can when we can, and we're always trying to build a better relationship. So this isn't to be disrespected, the work that they gave. It was to build a relationship that we're still showing up, all of us here today, to continue building.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully I can help with some things. And I just did want to say I appreciate so much what you all said. I live in North Downtown, and when those people came to town, the police helicopters flying over my house, my son said, "Hey, Dad, I want to go downtown with some friends." I said, "No." We just got in the car and left, and that was 10 o'clock that morning. And Heather worked for a man I go to church with. She was killed outside of my office at that time where I worked. And this community needs to find a way. And one of the things the Historic Resource Committee, and I'm not the chair, I'm just staff, but one of the things we discussed earlier this year, the committee said, everyone in the world is watching Charlottesville and how we respond to what happened and what we do from those events. And I think a lot of us are waiting for that to happen. And so I take a lot of guidance from what you all are saying, and hopefully that opinion of the Historic Resources Committee sort of maybe helps in some of this. Now, to just simple facts and figures here. As far as any input from the Historic Resources Committee or anything like that, that's entirely up to you all. I would say that I've already received a lot of input from a lot of people in the community, and the opinions range from leave the statue alone to leave it there, recontextualize it, to remove it entirely. So I'm not preempting a discussion amongst the committee or anyone, but it maybe just saying ultimately it is going to be a decision before council. Now, relative to the local designation, and so we've got three things. We've got the city of Charlottesville designates things historic or in architectural design control districts. There's state designation, Virginia Landmarks Register, and then there's the National Register of Historic Places. I also serve as staff for the Board of Architectural Review. The BAR reviews alterations to site structures within designated districts. Virginia Landmarks Register, National Register doesn't create anything as far as the BAR. It's only that local designation. In discussions with legal staff, the way the code is written and it refers specifically to a map within the design guidelines, this statue is not identified as a contributing structure within that district. As such, the removal or demolition of a non-contributing structure is not subject to review by the Board of Architectural Review. So, but to just add a piece to that, were it to be looked at as in the context of the historic district, something very important about the BAR, and I think a lot of folks don't realize, but the BAR's actions in essence are recommendations, because every action by the BAR is appealable to City Council. It just 99.99% of the time people accept that recommendation and don't appeal it. So were the BAR to review this, and I as staff would have to advise the BAR to comply with our design guidelines, which have very specific criteria relative to demolitions. So I would be obligated to express to them, here are the reasons for preservation. The BAR could say, no, we will not grant what's called a certificate of appropriateness for that removal, demolition, but then that could be immediately appealed to you all. Sort of a strange situation, but you know, one body then being appealed to council, but that would be the way it could be handled. But as far as our understanding of the code, there is no requirement that the BAR review the demolition or removal. The other elements in this, and this is when we spoke in, I think, July at council meeting. If this is an action that's singularly, entirely, I mean, imagine that statue is out in an island somewhere and it's nothing to do with the streetscape project and any state or federal funding. It's singularly, entirely, completely a city action, then you all can make a decision and vote to remove it or keep it. That is your decision. If it's an element of the streetscape project in any way, shape, or form, then you do have that process because of its designation on the Virginia Landmarks Register, and because there's state funding involved, there are laws. So you would have to comply with that. That does not the result is not you can't touch it because of the state designation. It would simply be there would have to be an evaluation of its impact. So I think, you know, consistent with the recommendations that we made in July, if this is something you wish to pursue and not have it be encumbered by that process, and certainly not encumber what we said is a city infrastructure project, then it should, the best course is to treat this as a city decision and separate and not related to any other action involving VDOT or the state. Does that help?
You're saying that something we can do is to keep that independent of that
If you all
streetscape?
if you do this independently and not part of any VDOT funding or any other state or federal funding, then the state and National Register designations do not compel you in any way.
So there's a follow-up question, though. Given that we have received money from the state to do the streetscape improvement, is there do we have to make sure that we've articulated somewhere that statue is not part of the streetscape improvement, or is it?
Well, Mr. Blair, yeah, it's like, I never made it to law school, so I'm going to hand it off to someone who did.
Best 3 years of my life. No, actually, what we would do based on Mr. Warner's comments, as well as some communications we've had from the Virginia Department of Transportation, this would be an independent action item for council. And council would be both a resolution as well as an appropriation out of city dollars in which there are no commingled state assets. And it would be treated more as personal property disposition is probably how that would be phrased in a resolution before you, as because the statue ultimately is the personal property of the city and the city council. And so then it would be a resolution to dispose of personal property with an accompanying appropriation to remove it.
So at that point, what's needed is going to be an estimate of the cost. And so we would know, we would have to know where to go and where it would go, and
correct,
and just get that estimate. And I guess I see some NDS staff here. Is that, how long would that take to get that estimate? Okay. But that information would be needed to make the other so there's a resolution to move, and then there'd have to be a resolution appropriating.
To appropriate the funds.
Okay. Thank you.
So we could do those separately, right?
You can. Certainly you could have it on the record to remove it from West Main, and then have a separate appropriation come before council. That would ultimately, city staff would then use those funds to remove it.
Thank you.
And I'd also be curious if the fund, because at some point, either we removed it now, independent of any future plans to disrupt that area, or maybe we would decide to do it at the time that that area is being disrupted, where everything is already. I'm just wondering if there's a difference in terms of, both process, cost, depending on if we were to do it now, and maybe there's a will to do that now, but also there might be an opportunity to do it when, again, we're just going to be, everything around the area is going to be disrupted, and it might be a better opportunity.
I also want to offer one thought. It's always dangerous brainstorming in public, but the Mr. Warner here and some of the community and the voices that we're hearing. So we have had this particular park is pretty unprogrammed right now, and what was going to happen was this statue was going to move a few feet to accommodate a wider turning lane, as I understand it. That park, as you all saw when you were there, it's a disaster. It's like half asphalt. It's not really a park because the way that it was designed. So one of the things about this whole streetscape project is it's going to resolve the problem of just this weird asphalt triangle, which isn't really a park, and it's going to be a real park. If this statue isn't there, then it offers a real. So the firm had been doing this programming kind of with the statue there, but they have native rock, and they're going to try to make it. If the statue isn't there, then the park, because there's going to be a real park there, and it's going to solve this. It could be a real opportunity for us to have a real testimonial to a lot of what has happened in the community over the last couple of years with regard to history, tolerance, inclusion, pluralism. I mean, it really could, because we're having this whole debate about 4th Street, but then that's a whole sticky wicket because people want it, driving through the downtown mall is a whole thing, and how to honor the memory of the folks there. And then there's a lot of the groups that you all are talking about, and it could be a real opportunity to just have this one park really be about pluralism and tolerance and inclusion in Charlottesville, and it will be ripe for an RFP and for design, and like the city owns it, and it could be if the statue isn't there. And I think that the design firm that we already have on, they were very interested in this mission, like in sort of they were. A lot of West Main project was designed over the years to try and include the surrounding neighborhoods. These are low-income neighborhoods with a lot of historical figures in their own rights, and you could have some really wonderful programming for that park without the statue there. And that could be done. So it strikes me that it's a real opportunity to address a lot of what we've been needing in this one place that's super central. I used to walk by this 4 times a day. So anyway, and it's another hook to kind of move this project along, because creating this park there is one of the things that the West Main project would actually do for the community.
And I just want to comment. I want to echo something that the mayor said earlier. I was also surprised at your request to be more inclusive in terms of if there was a future representation in another statue. But one of you said, together we can reach an unreachable place, was kind of a thought that you're coming from, that group together did that. And I really certainly want to echo. I just feel that the idea of the unity and different groups coming together, and it just kind of playing off of what Mike said, it's just something that is important to me. I just think that it really just touched me that was kind of your perspective and how you describe those relationships of your ancestor with these other players, but also just where we are as a community right now and how important it is that we are working together to a more positive and unified future. So I really appreciate those sentiments, and I agree. I think this is a really great opportunity for us to take advantage of a even more moment, as well as a space that is available. So thank you for those sentiments.
Just a quick comment. I want to caution us against, and this is what I think happens sometimes, honoring a group of people only does not mean you're not inclusive. Right? And sometimes we are so willing to stop the story that is a story of a certain group of people to tell a story of the whole. And the story of the whole will come together when you also honor a group of people. So you can't make every decision about everyone and everything. At some point, you have to make a decision to honor the individuals that are just before you. And a lot of times people have a very hard time with that whole pull back, and just because I may not be a part of this particular moment, that means that I'm excluded. And that's a very fragile state to be in. And we often get there in conversations, and we're about to take a break, but I do want to pull us back around to the fact of everyone isn't honored in every moment, and that doesn't mean that you're not honored. It's just in that particular time, in that particular space, it is not your time and your space. And again, I'm just one voice here, but I just want us to, remember that. And it's a very difficult place for people who have been traditionally honored only, when you are being removed maybe from that moment of being honored in that space. It is a very challenging thing. And there's always the search for my moment. And we have to get away from that. We have to be okay with when someone walks past an area, it is okay for them to read about, absorb the energy of, embrace in the spirituality of the moment of just the group of people that we're talking about at that time. It does not have to be a whole. And I didn't know, Ms. Green, did you have anything to share before we took a break?
No, I think I want to thank the representatives of the Western and Eastern tribes for your thoughts. Given me a lot to think about, especially as I continue to do the racial and ethnic history presentation of the Charlottesville area. But I think everybody's words, if we're truly listening, we've got a lot to think about and sit with as we think about how we want to move forward. But thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. So we'll come back at 11:21.
It's cold in here.